So before we get started, I got to talk to you about something really important, and that's the NGSS versus NGSSS. What's that extra S mean anyway? Well, that extra S is the Florida Science Standards, Next Generation Science, Sunshine State Standards. It's critically important for us to know our own standards deeply because the phenomenon-driven process has really been spearheaded by the Next Generation Science Standards, the national standards movement in science education throughout the country for several years. So when you go out there looking for resources, know this, that there's very few, if anything, literally being written for Florida science standards. So it's super important for you to know what our standards are first so that you can then dive into those resources and to see if there is any way possible to utilize some of that approach that you see. So just a quick example of how the national standards are presented in a middle school example. This is the topic of structure and properties of matter, and the areas you see up here are something close to what we may associate with standards, and these are called performance expectations. Below it, you'll see these three areas that are these columns that are colored and for their own separate purposes. The one right here called disciplinary core ideas is a further unpacking of the performance expectations. What you can't see is how deep this column goes because there's much unpacking of all this of the standards here and the expectations of the students. Cross-cutting concepts to your right, these are the how they want students thinking during the process of learning the science at the moment. And on the other side, the science and engineering practices, those might look a little familiar to you because Florida, in fact, has incorporated those in the description of every science course in the past couple of years. And it's with these we're going to put some focus on because we utilize these, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with thinking of the cross-cutting concepts also. But rather than using their performance expectations, it's critically important to remember our own standards. So if you see reference to three-dimensional teaching, learning, and assessing in any resources out there, that's what they mean by the three dimensions, the science and engineering practices, the disciplinary core ideas, and the cross-cutting concepts. Every approach in the science classroom for the national standards is keeping all three of these in mind while teaching the science concepts. Also on this page you'll notice the logo. Anytime you see this logo, you'll know this has been aligned for the national standards and not Florida. So keep that in mind. We absolutely need to know our standards deeply so we can know what to do or utilize, if anything, in something that you've come across. So you may recall the cover of the 2019-2020 curriculum map. We had these 8 science practices on the cover because that was when we introduced the importance of deliberately and intentionally planning these opportunities for students to demonstrate how students will be learning science. The 2020-2021 curriculum map will also make reference to these science practices as well. Remember, this is what we want students doing in the classroom while they're learning science. This page has been dedicated to page 9 on every curriculum map, no matter what course you teach. And this is to provide you some access to the information under each science practice and to have some understanding of it and provide you some opportunities for deeper learning. First of all, make note that the bullet points here have been added this year to kind of lessen the reading and give you more of a question on what are you doing to intentionally have the students perform this particular practice. But if you would like to learn a little bit more and maybe spend anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes to learn a little bit more about the practice, the QR codes have been provided to scan, and then when you scan them, what you will see is Paul Anderson of Bozeman Science Channel explaining all the science and engineering practices per the QR code. Now keep in mind that he does a great explanation of the science and engineering practices. We'll focus on the science practices, and listen to his explanation of the unpacking of what a science practice is. So this has been provided to you through the QR code so you can have some real-time, extra deeper understanding of what that means. So to summarize, it's super important to deeply understand our own science standards in Florida. we are probably going to be venturing out into the world, the internet, and looking for resources for phenomenon, and therefore we may be exposed to some curriculum that has not been written for Florida, but for the national standards, and we need to keep that in mind. So as you move forward in this course, what you'll need to do is make sure you keep clicking next on the bottom of the page and perform the next expectation of you in the next page. So this is going to be really awesome, and I can't wait to get this started. So go ahead and let's do it.